My wife's name is Susan. We met in high school, and after dating for 10 years, we got married. Susan wasn't particularly the beauty queen type, but she had a cute smile and was a cheerful woman. Soon after we married, we were blessed with a daughter, whom we named Michelle. My wife was a devoted woman, and had always supported me. At that time, my mother, who lived with us, was battling cancer, and Susan managed to take care of our child and my mom while working part-time. I wished she wouldn't overwork, but she continued to work to contribute to our finances. She would drop off Michelle at daycare, leave my mom with a visiting nurse, and then head to work. No matter how tired she was, she would always say it's better to eat healthy and would go grocery shopping to cook homemade meals. Whenever I had a day off, I helped with the housework, and when possible, I would take my mother to her medical appointments. This life continued for 3 years, until my mother passed away. After the funeral, Susan suddenly disappeared. This was when we were just starting to settle down. She had left a letter behind. The letter said, "I'm sorry, I want a divorce. Please don't look for me." She left with only the bare essentials. I don't know why she left. It was beyond my comprehension what had happened so suddenly. I called her cell phone immediately, but all I heard was a message saying the number was no longer in use. Could it be? Maybe she had run off with someone. That thought crossed my mind. But I couldn't believe that she would have an affair. The night before she disappeared, Susan said as usual, "I will always love you and Michelle." I was in total shock that she had suddenly vanished. If there was something so serious that she wanted a divorce, I would have wanted to talk it over. I couldn't believe that everything was going to end with just a letter. I was filled with a sense of frustration. I wondered if she was dissatisfied with something about me. I admit I took her devotion for granted. Because she was always there with a smile, I never realized she might be struggling or, perhaps, had a change of heart. The regret was overwhelming. I think I cried until I had no tears left. Since then, we've been waiting for Susan to come back. But she never returned. I tried calling all her friends, but no one knew where she was. She had a sister who lived abroad, but Susan said they hadn't seen each other in a long time. I didn't have her contact either. Her parents had passed away when she was young, and there were no relatives to turn to. There was to be no one to rely on. Where on earth did she go? Why did she leave? I found myself increasingly unable to understand what Susan was thinking. Still, because I wanted to believe in her, I never proceeded with the divorce. Since then, I've been raising Michelle on my own. She never became rebellious, and not to brag, but she turned out to be a great kid. Michelle is good at cooking, and she makes delicious scrambled eggs for breakfast. It tasted a little plain but somehow comforting, similar to the scrambled eggs my wife would make. As Michelle grew, she began to resemble Susan more and more. Her smile while covering her mouth with narrowed eyes, her wide-open mouth when she was surprised, and her casual gestures were all just like Susan in her school days. Seeing my daughter reminds me of her and made me feel like my heart was going to burst. Whenever I show a sad face, Michelle comes up to me with a big smile and says, "Cheer up, Dad. Come on, smile, smile." Her face was just like Susan's, and it really tugged my heart. For me, Michelle was the only reason to live. Without her, I probably couldn't have recovered from the shock. Michelle attended local schools for middle and high school, and instead of going to college, she entered the workforce. Being the kind soul she is, she might have given up on college thinking she didn't want to burden me. As a low-paid salaried worker who wasn't very good at his job, I never climbed the corporate ladder and am still a regular employee. It's pretty pathetic. especially when my daughter is working so hard. Even after becoming a working adult, Michelle didn't live on her own and stayed to live with me. I always told her, "You can live your life the way you want." However, she would laugh and say, "I'm living the way I want to. Besides, Dad, you wouldn't be able to cook if I left, right? I can't just leave you and live by myself." It made me really happy that she chose to stay by my side. But one day, Michelle will meet a wonderful man and get married. Even though it's still in the future, it sometimes makes me feel sad. My daughter had turned 20 this year. And on her birthday, we received a letter. It was an acute envelope with floral patterns, addressed to both Michelle and me. When I looked at who it was from, Susan's name was written there. Stunned, I stood there as Michelle came up from behind. She whispered, "Mom." We opened the envelope, and there it was, a letter written in Susan's familiar handwriting. It was definitely Susan's writing. She writes beautifully, in a feminine way. We read the letter intently. "I'm sorry for leaving so suddenly. You must be resenting me for being so selfish. I'm filled with remorse thinking about how much you both must have worried and suffered." As we read, tears streamed down both mine and Michelle's cheeks. At the end of the letter, it said, "There's something I want to give to you both. It's with Claire, so please go see her." Claire is Susan's twin sister. She had been living abroad for years, and Susan said she hadn't been in contact, but Claire's contact information was in the letter. When I called, Claire answered with a voice that sounded relieved yet a bit sad. "I'm glad you contacted me." I asked Claire. Susan wrote in her letter that she has something to give us. Where is she now? Claire simply said, "Let's meet in person and talk." After getting her address, Michelle and I went to Claire's apartment a few days later. It seemed she had returned from abroad a few years ago. After exchanging greetings, we were led into the living room. Claire said, "Thank you for coming all the way here today." Looking at Michelle, she continued, "You've grown so much. You look just like my sister." Her words almost tore my heart apart. I asked, "Where is Susan? We want to see her." Claire looked down and said, "I'll take you to her. I'll explain everything once we get there." She drove us for about an hour, and we arrived at a large hospital overlooking the sea. What does this mean? Is Mom sick? Our minds were in a panic. With a sad expression, Claire told us that Susan had early-onset dementia. Susan was advised by doctors to be hospitalized and undergo rehabilitation, but she couldn't bring herself to tell us. She left home because she didn't want to be a burden, and she didn't want us to see her gradually forget her own family. She thought telling me the truth would only worry me. So, that's why Susan decided to leave us and was admitted to the hospital. Claire was the only one informed about it. Hearing that Susan's condition had progressed so much that she no longer recognized even Claire, I broke down crying on the spot. Michelle was crying too. It seems Susan, before forgetting her family, had asked Claire to deliver the letter on Michelle's 20th birthday. Claire took out a small jewelry box from her bag, presenting a necklace and a ring, said, "She wanted me to give these to you too." The necklace was a treasure Susan had always cherished. It was the first thing I bought for her on our first date when we were students. And the ring. It was our wedding ring. I couldn't afford anything fancy on my low salary, but Susan had cried big tears of joy, saying, "Thank you, thank you." Also, there's this. Claire handed us a letter. It was filled with memories of a family trip we took together. The time we went to an amusement park where Michelle got too excited and hurt herself, and the time I fell over in another amusement park and became a laughing stock. Susan wrote these memories down while she still remembered. She asked me to deliver this letter, the necklace and ring, when Michelle turned 20. Claire explained. Susan had entrusted her feelings and wishes to her sister, Claire. Claire, with tears in her eyes, said, I really wanted to contact you sooner, but I couldn't break the promise I made with my sister. No, Claire, I'm grateful to you. Thank you for keeping Susan's feelings safe. I thanked Claire. Thank you, Aunt Claire. Michelle also expressed her gratitude. And so, after a decade we were finally able to meet Susan again. When Claire opened the door to the hospital room, there was Susan, now aged with streaks of gray in her hair. Oh, hello. You must be from the room next door, right? And who might this gentleman and lovely lady be? Nice to meet you. I had thought about what I would say if I ever met my wife again. I had been thinking about it for decades now. But when the time had finally come to look her in the eye, I was speechless. Moreover, I had never imagined a situation like this. The moment our eyes met, my chest tightened and tears spilled over. Oh dear, why are you crying so much? Did something sad happen? Susan looked at us worriedly. No, we came to clean the hospital today, and I guess the disinfectant got in my eyes. I lied awkwardly. Oh, I see. Be careful. As we stepped out of the room, Michelle, her eyes red, patted my back, saying, "Smile, Dad, smile." Susan had always been my greatest support, more than anyone else. She cared for me more than anyone else. Yet, I hadn't noticed her suffering at all. I felt foolish for not realizing it. Seeing me downcast, Michelle told me, "Mom might have forgotten about us, but the memories we made as a family are still in our hearts. I think it's the same for her. She might forget in her mind, but her heart remembers. Let's support Mom as much as we can from now on." Yeah, you're right. Proud of the wonderful daughter I had, I was moved to tears again. We can bring back the memories Susan has forgotten. Nor can we reclaim the time we weren't together. But if it helps her in any way, I want to be there for her, to support her as much as I can. From the next day, Michelle and I visited Susan anytime we could. We talked to her about daily things and about everything and anything. Susan seemed to perk up, saying, "Chatting really activates the brain, doesn't it?" On the shelf in her hospital room, there were old family photos of us. "Isn't this photo wonderful? It brings back such nostalgic feelings. I feel the same when chatting with you. It's very comforting," Susan said, smiling at Michelle and me. "We feel the same way." Michelle and I smiled back at Susan. The three of us, laughing together as a family. Able to be with my wife and daughter. How long I had been waiting for such days. Even if she forgets, our bond as a precious family will never change. I want to support her, always and forever.